So earlier this week, I had the very lucky pleasure of scrolling through Amazon Prime trying to find a movie to watch. And I stumbled upon AmbuLAnce, which came out last year, is directed by Michael Bay, and I thought, yeah, I'll give this a shot. So here I am, a little bit later, to give you my full and honest review of this, what I can best describe as plain movie. So first off, this is a movie with Jake Gyllenhaal. I think he's like the only really notable actor that I noticed during the whole time. And it's basically him yelling for what seems like 4 hours, but I think the movie's runtime is closer to 2.5. But anyways, it's about this other guy, and he is just getting out of serving in the military, and he needs some money because his wife has cancer or something. And so he needs money, and his adopted brother is Jake Gyllenhaal, and they come up with a plan on how to steal $32 million from this bank in LA. During the process, they're pretty unsuccessful, as one can imagine, in doing this, and the main guy, whose name I'm definitely going to butcher, is Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. And him and Jake Gyllenhaal are robbing this bank, and it goes really poorly, and they are basically running away, trying to run away. And halfway through, the brother shoots a cop, and then an ambulance has to come and rescue the cop who's been shot. And now the two that are fleeing captured this ambulance, and they take over as it's trying to make it to the hospital to take the fallen officer to the hospital, obviously, because he's been shot. And inside the ambulance is a paramedic, and it's the fallen officer. And the paramedic, I think her name is Eiza Gonzalez. She's pretty good in this too, but so that's the plot. It's pretty simple, I would say. And basically the whole movie is them like in a speed rendition trying to get away from all of the cops. And there's different elements and people that are chasing them and trying to take them down, basically. And I won't spoil the ending, but it definitely is a movie where I think you can predict it pretty easily, and that's just all I'll say about it. The ending was, I don't know, I didn't find it rewarding after watching basically the same 8 drone shots over and over again. Through the entirety, I was like, come on. I just kept looking at my watch being like, there's no way they can fit more of these same like police trying to capture the ambulance scenes over and over again. And the whole reason that they can't like capture them quickly is because of the fallen officer in the back and the paramedic. They don't want to hurt her. So basically these two are kind of getting away with everything because they have hostages. And I think this movie could have been a 4 out of 5 for me if you just like indiscriminately took away all the drone shots and you also just took out the middle 40 minutes. Like you didn't care what happened, just took it out. So basically something that it's really upsetting to me and just like ruined the pacing for me is that there's several times where they reference this event that they're going to try, this stunt that they're going to try to pull off, which basically entails them creating a diversion of sorts and recruiting one of the local gangs to help them. And this is brought up really early in the chase. Like, it is brought up so many times. It's brought up like 3 or 4 times with like various phone calls. Like, there's like this comedic bit where Jake Gyllenhaal is like trying to get his assistant to do something for him. And it just like, it wasn't that funny, but it also like had no meaning to the plot really. It was kind of like this like gag, but it just added more time. And more time they're like building and building and building the scene up. And the scene in question of when they actually do pull off the diversion is maybe 30, 45 seconds long. It takes so little in the whole film. Like, you're thinking, oh, there's going to be like this cool scene because they've been building up at this point for an hour. And you think, oh, okay, this is going to get like a ton of reward for me. Like, I've really suffered through this and I'm like just trying to make it through. And then it's like the payoff is so lame. It's just like, well, okay, this is predictable. And that's really what's getting me when I'm like thinking about this movie. It's just like how long it was, how long the setups were, just for like the payoff to be like a drone shot that he had used multiple times before, and then them like getting away, obviously, and then them just being like, oh, okay, we have another one coming up. It was basically like they would pull off this one escape. The escape would have like an explosion with it. And then they would follow it up by having the cops like talk about how they're going to make a new plan and how they have all this like state-of-the-art technology and how they're like following them through the streets of LA. And then they basically just use the same set piece again. Like, then they're like, oh, okay, let me just try to escape in a very similar way, which is that the main guy, he just is a good driver. So they're like, okay, well, he drove away from us. He got away. There's one part in Staples Center, which I thought they were really going to do something interesting with, and it just kind of fell flat. And this will be spoilers, but basically Jake Gyllenhaal like takes the paramedic hostage and is like dangling her outside of the ambulance, and the cop, which I thought was going to be some like interesting, was how they're going to handle this, but basically how they handled it was that the police just backed away, and then Jake Gyllenhaal was like, look at me, I got him again, and they just go like driving off again, at which point I thought they were going to pull off like one of the main set pieces, which was the ambulance diversion plan, and they just didn't. They kept driving for like another 30 minutes, it felt like. It was just like, oh my gosh, like this was like a cool setup. I thought you could have done a lot with this setup, and then it just the payoff wasn't good at all for me. I think generally that the performances are very weird. Like they feel really rigid, except for Jake Gyllenhaal and Eiza Gonzalez, who I think, well, Jake's just yelling the whole time. So, I mean, that's something, I guess. But the paramedic, I thought she was pretty good. I thought her arc was very well put together in general. But I just thought, like, if you were, like, really trying to build everything up and put everything together, like, if you would focus more on her, I think the movie would have been more compelling, and also you probably could have cut out an hour of this runtime. Like, the movie is so long, and it's hard to like explain how long it is and how long it feels, just because it's so repetitive as well. Like, I think there's movies that have really long runtimes. Like, I'm thinking right now of Decision to Leave, which I think has a very similar runtime as AmbuLAnce does. And there are so many like things that happen in that movie versus this one. It's just like, how did you come up with something that's so like it just seems like off the cuff. And I haven't seen a lot of people say that like it's better than what it gets credit for, but I disagree very strongly. Action movies are my favorite genre of movie, and I'm usually very generous to them and how they can handle the plot. But this one was so like boring in the action sequences because it was just the same thing over and over again. So it makes it hard for you to be like, oh, okay, this was a good action movie. Like, the story was pretty compelling, I thought. The main guy, his wife, dealing with her cancer, and like this is why he needs to do it. And there's like this like chosen family element, and that's why he's with everybody else. But it just doesn't last very long, and like I've seen it before. So it's like I was almost like I'd rather watch Den of Thieves than this, because although the story was worse, the action was so much better. It was like, well, this is basically the same movie. Another comparison to me is The Town. The Town like beats this movie hand over fist, like it's not even close. I even think Speed is pretty referenced in this as well, just because they just never stop. Like, there's so many moments where they're just yelling at each other like, we don't stop, and it's sort of like, well, yeah, because if you stopped, you would get caught. That's obvious. But so it did feel quite a bit like Speed, and I don't think the characters in this movie were as good as they were in Speed, so that's something as well. There's this setup with like drug dealers that's very weird too. Basically, it's like how like they owe something to them, but it's not very like truly clearly understood of like why they're doing this, except for some things that happened in the past with Jake Gyllenhaal's father, the adoptive father. And it's so weird because it's like so rushed, and you think like, oh, this plot point shouldn't be rushed at all, because it can give a lot of depth to all of the characters involved, and it's so fast, and like the payoff is so fast as well, that you think like, oh, that's not it, is it? And it is like that is it. There's like this scene where like this guy's getting chased and he eventually gets got, and then the other characters are like, oh, that's really sad. Now it's time to execute vengeance. But then the vengeance plan is like so easy to see. Like, you can spot it from a mile away when it happens. And it's like, well, this payoff sucks. So yeah, personally for me, I think the movie's enjoyable. It definitely is like one of those movies where you just have to turn your brain off. But it's so hard to keep watching because, I mean, I gave it a 3 out of 5, but just talking about it now, I'm almost thinking of like changing my rating to a 2 out of 5, just because of how, like, I'm like trying to remember these story points, and it just gets worse in my head. Like, the execution really felt like they were just, for some reason, going for length of movie. At each turn, I just kept thinking like, this shot was just too much. It was too over the top, and it didn't do anything for the general story. So yeah. So yeah, in sum, if you're on Amazon Prime and you really have nothing else to watch, I guess I would recommend AmbuLAnce. But it's really hard for me because Amazon Prime has so many good options, even for action movies. It really does. So, yeah, I think I said I would give it a 3 out of 5, but I think I'm going to change my rating to 2 out of 5. So, anyways, that's my review of AmbuLAnce. If you've seen this movie, I'm sorry. But if you have any thoughts, leave them in the comments, and I will try my best to respond. And that's my review for AmbuLAnce. All right, bye.